In response to the coronavirus, the U.S. has begun funneling all flights from China to 7 major airports where passengers can be screened. Sea-Tac is one of them, and that's where King 5's Amity Idrisi is live this morning with details on how the CDC will identify these sick passengers. Amity?
Well, Jake, we've been watching the arrivals board all morning long and haven't seen one flight come in from China, and you can see a lot of those flights are canceled right now, especially Delta Airlines. They canceled all their flights yesterday. Now, a lot of people wonder, how does the CDC track the millions of people who come into the U.S. every day? Well, they're watching closely, and all passengers coming in from that area are checked for fever, difficulty breathing, and if they're sick, they're taken to the hospital. But then you have to worry about the other passengers sitting around the infected person. So check out this diagram from the CDC. The red seat indicates the sick patient. The blue are all the people who are likely exposed. And if you are one of those people in blue, you can expect a call from the CDC. Now, the investigation into an illness can start as early as on the airplane, where airline crews notice they are trained to spot infectious diseases. They would contact ground crews and then dispatch the CDC to check out the patient at the gate. Now, on top of the screening, there's also a new quarantine which bans any foreign nationals from the Hubei province from coming into the United States. And there were hundreds of Americans who were evacuated out of the Wuhan area. And we were told yesterday that the Pentagon is actually clearing space in several military bases around the country so that those people can be quarantined for at least 14 days while they monitor their conditions. We're going to keep an eye on things out here at the airport, but for now, I'm Amity Idrisi. Back to you in studio.
Yeah, scary if you get off the plane and you get tested. Like, it's just a lot going on. All right, thanks, Amity.